player reaches the last functional level of the kindergarten before everything went wrong on Bring a Friend Day, Banban, who is happy to see the player, explains why he shouldn't help the player face to face, being that he is prone to violent instincts, referencing his hellish form, and says that he doesn't trust himself to not let himself accept his violent ways. Banban tells the player to talk to Stinger Flynn at the aquatic sector, but Stinger Flynn has more important things to deal with than reason with the player. He then puts the player into the peach dream. He tells the player that he needs the children to see the real outside world. After her procedure, Nabnalina is loose, and the player is given the spider assembly audio tape. Banban tells the player to return to the aquatic sector and play the audio tape on the lounge speaker. The player calls the assembly and the two spiders meet. After Banban says that he feels that they should have been mutants, he's cut off as Stinger Flynn comes from the abyss, knocking out Nabnab and taking his body. And Nabnalina runs back to Nabnab's room in a hurry as the door closes. Upon going to investigate Nabnab's disappearance, the player is frozen by Stinger Flynn using his mind. He says that the player should have already left the kindergarten and puts them through the dessert dream. The player enters the dragon fight room and meets face-to-face with Tamataki and Shamataki. After following the instructions written on the walls, which explains how to fight off the two-headed dragon, the player collects 3 firework rockets, and each time they collect one, they place it onto Shamataki's tongue. Each time they consume the firework rockets, and they explode inside of the monster. And finally, after 3 rockets, the old mascot of the old kindergarten finally collapses. The player is able to obtain party hats from Mr. Kebab Man. Using Mr. Kebab Man, the player lures one of the Opila chicks into a frenzy, running away from the protection of Opila Bird and Tarta Bird, who are guarding the Opila chick. The player grabs the baby bird, causing Tarta Bird to jump down and begin chasing the player, but the player jumps onto Tarta Bird's back, taming the bird. Soon after, Opila Bird jumps down as well, and the two enter the room in front of them with the player placing the baby bird on Opila's back as Stinger Flynn rises from the abyss with a knocked out Banban in hand. He explains that Banban has somehow allowed Stinger Flynn to find out about very important information, and then using his powers he transforms Banban into his hellish form. From there, Banban gets up and begins chasing the player and the birds as the birds partake in a testing area that was meant to race Opila Bird and Tarta Bird, letting each one go forward and backward to allow the correct bird to enter the next door first. Eventually, they reach the monster fight. The event starts after the bird race ends with the player riding on Tarta Bird's back into another section of the room with Opila Bird and a baby Opila Bird riding on her back, following not too far behind. Hellish Banban chases Tarta Bird and the player into a room. Upon catching up, feral Banban tells the player, "You can run away, but the smell of your pancreas will always draw me to you." Before he can kill the player, Jumbo Josh unexpectedly stomps into the room, shaking the entire room with every step, getting Banban's attention. This distraction allows Tarta Bird and the player, who are soon followed by Opila Bird and her baby, to escape to a higher and safer area where they watch as the fight escalates. Jumbo Josh stomps closer and closer until Banban jumps onto him, where he begins punching Jumbo Josh over and over again. But Jumbo Josh is totally unfazed by this and just picks Banban off of him like a fly and throws him onto the floor before crushing him into the ground with his left hand. Before Jumbo Josh could use both of his hands to kill Banban, he is interrupted by Stinger Flynn. He pushes Jumbo Josh away before emerging from the darkness. He then orders Jumbo Josh to stop and goes in with his stinger, attempting to put Jumbo Josh into a dream state. But the Jumbo Josh immediately dodges Stinger Flynn before grabbing him. He then shows his true strength by throwing Stinger Flynn to the ground with all his strength, shaking the entire facility. The shaking causing Tarta Bird to lose his balance and fall onto the concrete floor below. Horrified by this, Opila Bird looks at the player, letting them know that she is entrusting them to take care of her child, before jumping down to save Tarta Bird. The player and the Opila chick proceed to the next room, leaving